Hello, welcome everyone who joined us. My name is Olga Tamanova. You're welcome in Ukrinform Media Center. It's been 10th year of the war, the 554th day of the full-scale invasion, and we're going to talk about Russian crimes. We're going to talk about how to rescue wounded Ukrainian prisoners of war and how to get them home. We see what is the condition of our prisoners of war. We understand that their health condition is quite poor. Even if they were not wounded, we understand that those with wounds, they don't have much time to wait for the next exchange. We need to get together and make sure that they are brought back home. We have two wives of our POWs from the Azov regiment, Maria Alekseevich and Anastasia Gondyul. They are wives of our wounded soldiers from the Azov regiment. We're going to talk about what was done and what needs to be done to get our heroes back home. Maria, the floor is yours. Please tell us your story. How did your husband became a POW and what you do? I'm a wife of injured Sergei Alekseevich. He was wounded during the defense of Mariupol. The second wound, he received the second wound in Alenivka during the terrorist act. Unfortunately, I don't know anything else apart from that because Russia doesn't provide any information about our POWs' health condition. There is no communication and we can't find any information on our own. After the terrorist act in Alenivka, families of wounded POWs created an organization. We created it in January this year after UN disbanded their injury and crippling fact recording effort, and we decided to do something about it. Unfortunately, our husbands fall into that category. First, we focused on the international investigation efforts in order to get back to it, to make sure the world considers it a crime. But unfortunately, after many months, we realized that there were many difficulties, but however, we are making slow progress, and our point is to draw more attention to injured POWs that don't receive medical care. We don't know what conditions they are in. We don't know their locations. They're in captivity for more than 15 months, and it's been 13 months after the terrorist act. We want to believe that our husbands, our family members will survive and they will get home, but they don't have time to wait. They don't have time to wait for 1, 2, or 5 years. We will do whatever it takes to get them back home. I would like to remind you that our Azov-style defenders are held in captivity. Volodymyr Zelensky, our president, said that these heroes, we need them alive. This is why they made that decision. And Hanya Malar said that the evacuation, which is imprisonment, will happen until these defenders will be returned home. Unfortunately, nobody is talking about that right now. Most of the Mariupol defenders are still there, including wounded people, including my husband. Unfortunately, the topic of our soldiers wounded as a result of the terrorist act, they don't talk about that nowadays. And we had a situation with Dmytro Lubinets in April this year. We first met him for the first time, but he thought that only the families of the soldiers that died that are present. He didn't even know that there were people who survived. I think that's not professional, and there are many people who are still waiting for their family members, loved ones, to return back home. So I'm requesting the Ukrainian government to do whatever it takes, because they don't have time to wait. Apart from Dmytro Lubinets, I would like to say that when we started working as a center, the General Prosecutor's Office and SBU called us, and we learned that, unfortunately, the topic of wounded people during the terrorist act, they are not part of a separate case. There is no separate case about the terrorist act. It's been investigated according to the criminal code. It's about violation of laws of war, but unfortunately, they are investigating instances where soldiers were killed, but unfortunately, they are not helping the wounded. And we've been working for the last half a year to make sure that all of these instances are investigated as part of one case, so that we can provide the results of it to an international community. We can send the results to the ICC, UN. We need to send that information for further investigation abroad, for follow-up investigation. I would like to ask the Ukrainian audience, journalists, if you can help us remind people about our families, to talk about the terrorist act and the people who survived. You are free to write to us by email. We have a page in social media, and we will always cooperate with you. Anastasia, please, I would like to give the floor to you as well. My name is Anastasia. I'm a wife of a twice wounded Anastasia Gondyul. He received the first wound on the 6th of April, and on the 16th of May, when he left Azov by the order of the Ukrainian command, he was evacuated to Olenivka. At that time, he had fragment of a projectile in his back. Then he was wounded for the second time, and he was in the list. He was in the list of wounded soldiers. I'm not sure about his location right now. As far as the International Committee of the Red Cross is concerned and the UN, today we don't have any separate case in both organizations. The defenders that were promised that their lives will be saved, will be spared, they are under threat, and there are more than 100 people who are wounded, those who risk their lives. They are not in any list, in any international organization. On the 19th of May, there was a meeting with the commander of the Azov regiment. He said that after the boys were returned, they were interviewed. They are interviewed, and if they identify that they are under threat, and they will given a priority for exchange. They gather together our men and they threatened that they will be executed. That's cruel treatment. Then Olenivka happened, and as far as we understand, they don't receive any medical care. At the time of terrorist act, they already had wounds, many of them. Why didn't they create a separate criminal case according to which they are to be returned? As far as Dmitro Lubinets is concerned, on the 28th of July, before the terrorist act happened, families of the wounded met Dmitro Lubinets, where other organizations were represented. After his presentation, Dmitro Lubinets made a short break, and he promised to answer questions afterwards, and then he did an interview for journalists, and then he left without saying goodbye to the families. And we didn't have any possibility to ask him a question, and we didn't have a possibility to talk to the press. So that's lack of respect. What else could it be? And that's an attitude that he displayed. So what we request from our government, from the command of Azov regiment, we want the survivors back. Those who survived from hell, those who have multiple wounds, and now we don't know anything about their location or condition. They need medical care. Their condition is extreme, and the last time we saw them, their condition was horrible. That happened after 2 months of captivity. Now it's been 15 months. We don't even know what kind of wounds they received during the terrorist act. From what we saw in Donetsk hospitals, that's hard to bear. Well, just hope that our government does what it takes to get our heroes back, to get them home. We understand that a lot depends on the other party. They're not doing anything to make it happen. And you mentioned that the International Committee of the Red Cross and the UN, they don't have a separate case. Did you learn about that from the official statement? Where did you get it? They don't have a separate case for the wounded that very night, because I was in the UN headquarters in Geneva and the International Committee of the Red Cross, and they don't have that. It's just a part of the single case. And I asked them to create a separate case for my husband. They did, but not for the terrorist act. And they sent a request to the other party, and they sent it on the 7th of February. So far, I haven't received any information. They asked the other party for his condition and his location. No information whatsoever. Your organization is there for 8 months. What were you able to learn about the wounded that are still there? Do you have any information that you would like to talk about? Well, they are still there. Almost all of them are still there. Only 11 defenders were returned on the 21st of September last year, and no other people were returned. How many? 59 people who are wounded, people who are in the Russian lists, those that were sent to the hospital. Were able to locate them? No information about that whatsoever. Dear colleagues, if you have any questions, please feel free. Ukrinform, Natalia Molchanova. My question is for Anastasia. You mentioned that you said that they opened a separate case for your husband. So I guess you work with lawyers that are specialists in the international law. Can it be impetus to expand the case, add more people to that list, or it should be processed separately? I understand that you would like to promote that topic. And what we keep hearing from our authorities, they can't disclose any information about the exchanges, the negotiations they've been doing with the Russian party. They don't disclose that information. But maybe you sent request to the ombudsperson's office and the coordination staff in order to create this case with the wounded, and to make sure that it's they work with it in the International Criminal Court as a proof that Russia doesn't respect Geneva Conventions. Well, the case about my husband, that's was information on the coordination staff website, or any person could write a letter to them, to the UN, and I did that. I did that on the coordination staff website. And after 3 months, I received a reply from the Secretariat of the UN, where they invited me and everyone else to the 130th session in human rights that happened in May this year. And this is where we were present, and anyone could be present online and offline. Those who couldn't be there physically, they could join the meeting online. So they had these cases for those who replied. And speaking about the terrorist act survivors, we talked about that with Dmitry Olubinets and the coordination staff. We always talk about that, but they reply that your family members are no different from any other soldier. But 193 defenders, POWs, they were sent for deliberate execution. Why our husbands were in that list, we don't know. And we haven't received any reply. But what they say is, we will try to get everyone back, but your men are no better than any other POW. Yes, I would like to talk about a separate case in Ukraine, and we mentioned the coordination staff and Dmitry Lubinets, and even the military installation that our husbands were attached to. They didn't officially register them as wounded survivors. Well, unfortunately, we have no information about most of these people. We kept writing them and calling them, and they say that they will be registered as officially wounded after they get back home. When we can confirm the wounds. Speaking about the separate case in the coordination staff, we keep talking about that, but they keep saying no. For example, from the very beginning, when I learned that my husband received wounds in Mariupol, I learned about that in June last year, and I kept in touch with the coordination staff in dealing with POWs, and they said that wounded defenders are a priority category for an exchange. And it's been 15 months. He's still wounded, just like any other soldier, but they may have complications because of the wounds that were not treated. So unfortunately, there is no separate case. Do I understand correctly? The military installation informed you about the wound? Yes, that was the first wound. The wounds received in captivity, they just don't register it. They don't register that information. There are witnesses, but they don't want to register it. I have one official witness, and I can find more. And his comrades say that they seen him in the hospital, but they don't register that information officially in their records. Please. I have a couple of clarifying questions. Do we have any information about these 11 people who were exchanged, those who received heavy wounds? Were they interviewed? Did they provide any statements to any international prosecutors, maybe ICC representatives? Do you know anything about that? And then I will ask you more questions afterwards. The UN did a report. In May, they made a report, and they provided us with all information, and they said that these 11 people that were exchanged were interviewed by the UN. The ICRC didn't interview them, but they said that the wounded refused to provide any comments, so they didn't have any possibility to interview them. We tried to talk to them so that they can interview them, but we failed. What about the Ukrainian party? During the SBU meetings, they said they interviewed everyone, but information varies. Sometimes they say, no, there were no interviews. And we had Arsen Dmitrik present at that meeting. He was exchanged on the 21st of September. He was the officer in charge among the captives in the barrack, and we asked them, were you interviewed in April? They said, no, we were not interviewed. And then SBU said in summer, in June, they said he was interviewed, everyone was interviewed. What is the mechanism behind that? They disbanded the commission. That's an independent investigation. That report they did, that was for the independent investigation. That was the report by the High Commissioner in Human Rights in the UN. I think it was done on the 25th of March last year. It was pretty detailed because they described that lists were made before that there. So they brought 193 people. They sent them to that barrack. They relocated them, and they described the wounded. They described their injuries, wounds. There were fragmentation wounds, traumatic amputations, lots of different things. And they described that the prison guards put them in trucks like animals, like cattle, and brought them to Donetsk hospitals. And it happened 5 hours after the terrorist act. They were bleeding, and they tried each other. Unfortunately, some people didn't make it. They lost their blood. On the way to the hospital, they had more wounds, and the road was bumpy, and they didn't stop. They just didn't care. They just brought them to the hospitals. and there were a lot of people in these trucks. Unfortunately, we know that at least two or three people died on the way. One more question. In separate criminal cases on the wounded, what article is that? They are different articles. There is Article 110, 115, sometimes 146. It depends on the investigator, and it depends on the region, on the district. For example, my case, I sent a request last year in June. It was about the imprisonment, and they used an article about the missing persons because he wasn't, his wounds weren't confirmed. And basically these cases are part of Russia investigation, not separate investigations on the victims. But we would like to join, consolidate them, based on the articles about the violation of the laws of war. We would like to make it a complex investigation. So all of the people who died, they were part of a single case, yes. What about these individual cases in different regions? Are there any cases where they have some progress, where it reached the court? Sorry, do you mean the international court, the ICC? No, these criminal cases investigated by Ukraine. No. There were no court hearings. Do you know the number of such cases? Approximately. About the wounds as a result of the terrorist act? Well, yes, the ones investigated by Ukrainians. I think they opened around 120 cases. So they open these criminal cases when a person goes missing or they are captured. The requirement is DNA tests, because some of people can die in captivity. So yes, they did it. They opened the cases, 120 cases approximately. By the national police, all of the cases were sent to Luhansk and Donetsk Oblast headquarters of SBU. My husband's case was sent as well, but national police called me and they said that they received my husband's case back from the SBU. I'm not sure what is the reason for that. I will need to clarify that. Do you have any other questions? Okay, my question to you is, how can we help in that situation? How can we support you? We understand that journalists can promote that topic. Are there any other things that we can do for you? I'm asking you, please care about that. Please care about the terrorist act towards our defenders that defended Mariupol for 3 months. I want you to remember them. But also, when you get some information, when you see any interviews of these families, please support them, because it's critical that we promote that topic about the wounded. If we forget about them, we don't know what can happen to them today or tomorrow. We need to keep talking about them every day as more as possible. I'd like to add that on the official level, they didn't set a day of grievance for those who were executed in captivity. And our center created a petition on the president's website about the day to mourn the victims. And we'll need to gather 25,000 signatures. I think that's humiliating, because officials were supposed to do it, because it was execution for prisoners of war that were guaranteed life. They were killed in captivity, but they didn't set a special day for them to commemorate their death. Now we want to gather 25,000 signatures to make it official. We have a QR code that you can scan, and you can sign the petition on the website. And thank you very much for being here, and thank you for talking about this, about making sure that our heroes are returned back. And thank you to our journalists, and I hope that soon our defenders will get back home. Thanks to our armed forces working together for our victory. Glory to Ukraine.